It's been a while since I've taken a stab at the degenerating 90s slasher era, and I think going back to Scream is always the best starting point given its influence on the rise of obnoxiously self-aware horror movies that thought they were being clever, but were mostly using the term satire as an excuse for unoriginality. My video on Scream kinda covers the topic in question, but as a general summary, Scream ignited the horror genre's resurgence following the explosive diarrhea of direct-to-video and bargain bin sequels and knockoffs that existed purely so people can make kill count videos on YouTube 15-20 years later. The genius behind Scream was struggling screenwriter Kevin Williamson, who immediately became a bankable talent following Scream's critical and commercial success in 1996, which subsequently made his previous script seem more lucrative despite struggling to make its way to the market in the years prior to Scream, and now it exists as a cult classic that's been parodied and referenced more times than I care to remember. For your typical slasher movie, it had such a captivatingly creative setup, about a group of reckless teens who accidentally kill a stranger one night and vouch never to speak of it again. But 1 year later, on the anniversary of the killing, each friend receives an anonymous letter simply stating "I know what you did last summer," leading them to uncover the mystery of who they actually killed and who this hook-swinging fisherman really is. So let's talk about it. While I Know What You Did Last Summer was essentially just another cog in the slasher movie machine, it was a significant commercial success that landed some street cred for helping to revitalize interest in slasher movies again. Of course, it didn't help that it was quickly rushed into production to capitalize on Scream's popularity, so in comparison, it lacked the same sophisticated polish to make it stand out as anything conceivably groundbreaking. But it ticked the right boxes to satisfy the current generation's bloodlust for disturbing kills, likable if goofy characters, and its one major selling point, a mystery that is more fresh and compelling than anything the genre deserved at the time. It is worth noting it wasn't an original concept given it was loosely adapted from a young adult suspense novel of the same name, about a group of high school seniors who commit a hit and run against a child, to which they never speak of it again, only for a series of paranoid events to eventually persuade them into fessing up over what happened last summer. The film only takes the basic skeleton of the setup and turns it into a conventional killer scenario, whereas the novel was a moral lesson about how you can't run from your guilty actions, as the past will eventually catch up with you. Obviously, the film's melodramatic approach to a teen-stalking killer was scorned by the original author, but ultimately they go in their own independent directions, with the film modestly downplaying the morality tale in favour for what was simply an elaborate reinterpretation of the urban legend behind the hook. Initially, the filmmakers wanted to avoid blood and gore, so it wasn't just shocking for the sake of it. Yet considering how audiences were used to it by that point, producers were keen to make the danger seem more tangible and urgent, using graphic violence to make it seem like no character was safe, or at least not from a quick, painless death. Since the setup is a group being stalked by a killer who knows of their crimes, it does appear off that the first kill in the film would be Big Bang Theory Boy because he's the only actual person to have potentially seen them, as he drove suspiciously past them following the accident. But since Williamson's work screamed subversion all over it, it sets him up as the obvious red herring, immediately leaving the movie with no legitimate suspect, as you become just as perplexed as the characters as any outcome could be possible. I mean, you're naturally led to assume that it has to be one of the group because of the cliché plot twist most people expected at the time, especially given Fred's absence the majority of the runtime where he becomes the new obvious red herring. Well, at least in hindsight, Freddie Prinze Jr. really sold me on the idea that he could be the killer because of his fake wooden unemotional response to things. Then I realized he was just acting. The most interesting angle that keeps you on edge is this eerie supernatural vibe that becomes more believable as the film moves along. The opening establishes this subtle otherworldly atmosphere as the man they eventually kill looks around him in fear, generating a foreboding mood that doesn't match the stalker-slasher formula that the film is sold on. Now, at first it seems like foreshadowing, but it does make actual sense why this is when the story reveals its grand twist at the end, so calm your tits, I will get to it. But before for the payoff, low standards of the era aside, it does seem to suggest that the guy they killed really has come back from the dead to seek vengeance, keeping the mystery persistently involving. The film's greatest storytelling quality is that it never shows its full hand. It leaves so many holes and questions in the events that complicate or contradict themselves until it's all rationalized at the end. I'm not afraid to admit that I was genuinely unsure how this would all pan out, as the stalking scenes are jarring to a certain degree. Like, why didn't the fisherman kill King Douche when he had the chance? Or is finding Big Bang Theory boy in the trunk of the car real, or just some supernatural or psychological curveball? Because if it is the former, the killer really fluctuates between quality and efficiency. Regardless, the pattern of inconsistency helps sustain the sense of loss that permeates throughout the movie. At the end of the day, it's a tragic sudden event that leaves the characters suffering from trauma and guilt, but it's shown mostly in action, or rather inaction, as none of them are able to move on with the busy lives they envision for themselves following graduation. The very night in question has left them in a permanent stasis. They're still trapped in the purgatory of what happened, as much as they try to repress it. Even if the moral play isn't so direct in comparison to the book, it does keep the characters deeply aware of their actions. Sure, maybe not to the most realistic extent, but enough for you to engage emotionally with them. They know they're at fault, and you know it too. In fact, it doesn't try to redeem them, which I think adds to the whole feeling of purgatory and incompleteness. In the conclusion, sure, the last two survive and supposedly move on with self-forgiving redemption, but the bittersweet truth to the matter is that they still haven't been adequately punished for their misdeeds, never mind any absolution when, you know, they still committed a pretty serious crime. Yeah, they should definitely be in prison. I guess that's why the surprise ending with the killer comes into play, because there's unfinished business to attend to. Okay, so I know we need to address the twist, but since we're in the funky flow of it, because the first film ends with the cycle of non-forgiveness to the characters for their misdeeds, well, mostly because they were stupid enough to cut the fucker's hand off, launch him into the ocean, and not search to ensure he was dead, there was the inevitable sequel. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer isn't all that bad actually, at least if you take it as a serviceable slasher sequel with a contrived plot that simply exists to profit. I mean, I don't want to give it too much credit considering it's movies like this that caused the horror crash of the 90s in the first place, but nonetheless, it's a simple rehash of the same structure, introducing new victims, sinister kills, and basically making the killer the son of the first film's killer because nepotism is the perfect solution to keeping a franchise going. Other than the wild alternative to just blatantly going for the supernatural angle like the third direct-to-video film did, even though it's got nothing to do with the original cast, who are still part of an unresolved cliffhanger from the second film. Let's just talk about the first film's big twist. Right, so basically, the group discover the man they assumed to have killed was called David Egan, and upon meeting his sister, she reveals David was suicidal after he killed his girlfriend Susie in an unrelated car accident. Upon discovering Egan's body in the water, which the group apparently dumped there, the police confirm it was suicide by drowning, but it never seems to address the fact that his face and body would have been mangled because, you know, in actuality, he was hit at high speed by a fucking car. Later on, this plot hole morphs into a plot point when the group discover that they did not kill Egan. But if Egan jumped and hitting the rocks in the ocean below explain his mutilation, who the fuck did they hit? Well, Susie's father Ben was naturally a bit pissy at Egan for accidentally killing his daughter that he pushed Egan off the cliff in vengeance, and the man the group hit was Susie's father who was trying to escape the crime scene that he created, thus creating some sort of paradoxical karma loop or something like that. When the group dumped Ben's body into the water, he survived and went through the waiting game of stalking the group over the course of the year to learn everything about them and finally plan his vengeance, because this is a guy with a lot of pimped up anger it seems and has some sort of vengeful spite around people. In this case, naturally understandable. Okay, so it's a little convoluted, but like when I walk through the temporal logic of time and geography in Scream, everything perfectly aligns itself to explain all the initial gaps in its logic. For its reputation as a simple, straightforward slasher film, you have to actually pay attention to understand the payoff. Since it's so late into the film when this occurs, you do hit the same brain farts as the characters, and just assume that maybe it will take the windy road of intrigue only to bombshell a very obvious cop-out that Fred was behind it all along. Seriously, his performance indirectly keeps you guessing. Honestly, I like to think that Mark Wahlberg channeled this performance when he was making The Happening.
What? No!
Overall, for as much as the film is easy to criticize as just another generic formulaic horror film, it clearly knows it is, and uses it as an opportunity to at least tell a decent, respectable story within it. I don't think the characters are wildly interesting, they just play your usual archetypes, with Sarah Michelle Gellar being the only one to play against typecast, since Buffy the Vampire Slayer had just premiered that year, but that's only the case in hindsight. I think what Williamson did for the slasher genre wasn't to find it a new original hook or revolutionize the subgenre, but instead remind people that slashers are a template for creativity. They don't need to be highbrow or just contain the bare minimum. Audiences get out of it as much as you put into it. Regurgitating the same ideas or tropes isn't always technically a bad thing, if inherently so. It just comes down to one basic factor: put the right people behind it. Those who understand the genre, have passion for art, and most of all, respect that audiences are willing to go along with the ride if the emotional intelligence is there. Hello again, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on I Know What You Did Last Summer in the comments below, and let me know your favourite slasher film, preferably one that's kind of a bit obscure that not many people talk about, because I'm curious to see what people's thoughts are on that. Like, a good example of mine would be the Hatchet series, which I've mentioned very vaguely throughout several of my videos. It's really good if you ever get a chance to see it. It's about a killer called Victor Crawley who's in the swamp and just kills people and seems to be unstoppable. It's mad chaos, definitely go watch it. It's an Adam Green film. He's a great wee filmmaker. And if you enjoy what I do here and you want to help me to grow the channel, sustain it for the future with the whole chaos of demonetization and Article 13 and the inevitable collapse of the internet and the impending apocalypse, please do consider heading over to Patreon, where for just a few dollars a month you'll get early access, you can vote on future videos, know what I'm doing next time, get your name in the credits, and get access to our Discord community, where you can talk about all sorts of things from films, games, TV, comic books, books in general, art, music, whatever you want. It's exciting. I hope to see you over there. And I also hope to see you over on Twitter and Instagram as well. And until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.